welcome back to a special edition of Matters of the Heart, produced by St. Joseph the Worker. We've been on a little bit of break, but a lot has happened since our first episode when we spoke about COVID-19. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to really talk about this conversation of where we have been and what the nation has been seeing all over. And so our nation is in a state of emergency, but it is an emergency that this country knows all too well, unfortunately, and that's racism and inequality. With the stain of this disease really dating back 400 years ago, where it's still very, very prevalent in 2020, and it dominates conversations and remains a stain on our nation. And so for this episode, we really wanted to talk and explore how today's generations are having these heavy conversations, and also talk to some experts about what we can do to really alleviate and try to help our youth kind of get through these tough and uncomfortable conversations, and also bring in some aspects from community and from some of our lawmakers as well on this particular topic. So today we're talking about how can we impact change, or how can I impact change? And so my guests today are Jalen Johnson. She is a senior at Academy of Our Lady, and she's also part of the Student Union Diversity in Action at, which is a group at Academy of Our Lady, and she's also part of our Tough Youth Ministry. Jalen, you can wave a little bit.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm glad to have you with us. I'm also joined by Clark Knighton, who is the Student Union Diversity in Action, or SUDIA. He's the moderator at Academy of Our Lady. Hello, Mr. Knighton.
Good morning.
Good
So
morning.
glad to be here.
Thank you. And then also we have Representative Kyle Mark Green Jr., who is part of the Louisiana House of Representatives. And we're so excited to have him here today too as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, so we'll get right to it. Jalen, I'm gonna start with you. You are the youngest one on our panel, but youngest, but definitely wanted to, really talk to you to really kind of get your feeling on how you've been really feeling around this time ever since the tragic killing of George Floyd, but even prior to that, or around the same time, Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. It just seems like it all happened around the same time. And so that's a lot to take in. Mm-hmm. And then put on that COVID, and then all of that we're going through. So I'm just interested to see what have some of the conversations been among you and some of your peers.
So we mainly talk about how we feel towards like us having fathers who have to go out in the streets and deal with everything like this. And especially me, because my father, he's the description of the Black male. Not many people that I know, but he looks more, not that he looks bad, it's just that he looked like the more thing that they would target. And so I'm like, we're all concerned about, well, how it's going to be whenever we can't walk to the store, or we can't, go out and play at the park or something. Like, we don't play, but just, go out and talk at the park without feeling like we're targeted. And I just mainly feel that just because it's not the women being killed by, the police or the workforce or whatever, it still affects us, because the men have like major impact on our lives, especially my father, my brother, type of stuff. So we're all just, it's a lot, and we end up kind of arguing because everybody have different views. So we kind of like don't talk about it too much, because it's so hectic when you do.
So I know you go to AOL, which is a diverse high school, and so when you're having conversations, especially conversations about this with some of your friends that may be of a different race or a different ethnicity, what are some of those conversations like? Is it difficult to have those conversations? And do you feel that these particular recent incidents have sort of changed the narrative or how you engage with some of your peers?
Yeah, so now that this happened, it kind of makes everyone want to talk about it more and bring awareness to it. but it's still awkward because some of the reasons and some of the things, like we have friends whose fathers are policemen, and we have friends whose fathers are, you know, of different races. And so everyone's like, well, my family's not like this, and my family doesn't do this, and we're different. Like everyone becomes like, we're different whenever it comes to this. But prior to that, we really didn't talk about stuff like this much because it wasn't something that we had to worry about. But now that it's become a problem, we have to really take a step back and look like something is really going on. We need to talk about it. And I just try to tell all of our friends, like, we need to talk about it because we're what's coming up next, you know? Everyone, like our mom and everything, they're already here now. We're what's next, and we're the generation for the change. So we need to really talk about it, and because it's very difficult and people are sensitive to this thing, but we need to really talk about it.
Great. Ms. Knight, I'm going to jump to you because I know as a moderator and the adult figure essentially at the school for Sadia, you all did something in direct response to all of the happenings and particularly after the George Floyd incident. Can you share with the audience what Sadia did as a result of that?
Well, there we go. As I was actually just sitting and processing all of what was going on at the time, there was something that just moved in me that said we needed to do something, to respond, but something on the nature of getting our girls together, getting our students together to not necessarily have a discussion, but to have them feel like they were a part of what this historic moment was going to be about and how it would play out, but also to respond in a manner that was appropriate for our school. And that the thing that came to my mind is that we could have a prayer vigil, have a prayer service, a way of expressing, one, the concern for the situation that was at hand, or the situations that were going on directly affecting our communities, but also to have a way in which we could come together in unity. Now, it didn't turn out to be a total, as great a crowd as you might have anticipated or could have been, but we did have a very good turnout to say we planned something on a short basis. Also, considering the fact that this is at the point where we're dealing with COVID and we're dealing with, it was a summer, it was right at the beginning of summer. So I spoke with Sister Michelle, our principal, and she immediately embraced the idea and just encouraged me to involve some other students, which was not a problem. And the next thing I did to specifically get the Sadia group, and I said that was the other part about it. I said that if we are true to what our name says, Student Union, Diversity and Action, then it's time to do some action. And something small, just something small, like putting the girls together and having a pretty basic prayer service together, turned into something that was really, really dynamic, I believe, and it was totally successful. The girls got together and discussed some ideas. I had a framework in my mind, and we also worked together with our peer ministry group, Mrs. Tybin, who directs that group. And we brainstormed some ideas of how we wanted this to look and people we wanted to be involved. And Jalen was a part of that. And she had some tremendous ideas. And as a matter of fact, I lean on her for kind of coordinating these girls while we're out of school, because you don't get to see them all the time.
Right.
So she's a great asset to what we're doing. And then, again, the group has been in existence for several years, and we've had several great leaders a part of the group. But this prayer service turned out to be an event where we had between 150 and I think 175 people outside of the students that helped to put it together. For me, it was an amazing experience. It was an amazing experience because not only did we get the girls did we get people to come out and be involved in, and people from different communities, different cultures, different religions came out and supported it. We had pastors, we had lay leaders from different churches. We also had teachers that came out from our school and from other schools. It was wonderful. And I kind of patterned it after what I saw happen in a similar situation that the Archdiocese did a few weeks before. I attended a prayer service in a march that the Archdiocese did. And I said, well, let me take some of these ideas and use them rather than recreate the wheel. So we had a march from the back of the school to the front of the school where the prayer service was going to be, and then we proceeded with the prayer service.
That's awesome. That is amazing. And good to see that is leadership in the school that is actually really being proactive as well to have these conversations. Because I think what's been happening, and I think what was so different this time around, we all know, this is not anything that's something that we're immune to. Unfortunately, as being Black people and have seen this, it's something that is happening regularly. But I think what happened earlier this year in May, it really shook people. And, there's definitely still work to be done. It's definitely not over, but to see organizations, to see schools to be very proactive about doing this and to really empowering the youth, I think it's extremely important. Kyle, let me jump to you, because I know that this has definitely probably been a very different time for you as well. One, as a Black man, as a father, and then also as a lawmaker. How are you personally at this time? Because I know that trying to have all of those hats, and then also with you being in a public eye, sometimes you don't necessarily get a chance to evoke what you're personally feeling. And this actually really, hits home for you.
It does. Because the young men and women who are being killed, those are my peers. They're my age. I just made 33 at the beginning of this month. And so when I see my counterpart, losing their life, I put myself in their shoes. And it is something that is very emotional. We had a moving testimony by my colleague, Edmund Jordan, when, last session, he tried to strip away qualified immunity from police officers, which basically shields them from any civil liability if they were found to have violated a person's constitutional rights, but it didn't violate any clearly established law. It is tough. It is tough. I penned a letter to Sheriff LaPinto after Modesto Reyes was shot. And not so much as to, cast a judgment on the merits of what happened, because we don't know what happened.
Right.
But the issue in that matter was that, the sheriff's department does not utilize cameras, particularly body cameras or dash cameras. And so when you have a situation when there's a discrepancy in what actually happened, you can simply go to the tape. And,
right.
I talked about, the fact that my parents had to have the talk with me at an early age. I talked about the fact that, I had a great uncle who was shot and killed by Gretna police officers almost 62 years ago. And that has had an impact on me because that hurt, that pain is transferred from generation to generation. My grandfather, talked to me about it. My mom talked to me about it. My great-grandfather talked to my grandfather about it, so that pain still resonates today and is transferred from generation to generation.
Yes. And we here in Louisiana also are not too far removed from police brutality and police injustice. 2016, the killing of Alton Sterling made national news, which happened in Baton Rouge. And then now, of course, since 2016, there have been countless others, and even prior to 2016, of African-American people who have been killed at the hands of police officers. And it's striking because police officers sign up to serve and protect. And the one question is, why is it always something where it's Black people are presumed as a threat? And so, Kyle, in your opinion, what do you think is what does it have to take in order for that stigma for police officers to essentially go away? What needs to be done, and how can that trust be built back with the community, or can that ever be built up again?
Oh, yes, it can. First, we have to be cognizant that we all have our own prejudices. That's number one. You have to do some serious self-reflection and be honest with yourself. And that's both, that's everybody, that's Black and white. And I wouldn't dare to say that the issue of police brutality as it relates to African Americans is just at the hands of white police officers. That is not the case. Because I've had experiences where, I've been roughed up by Black officers over in Orleans Parish. So the issue is not so much as Black and white as it relates to officers, it's officers versus African Americans. So number one, we have to be willing to have the conversation, do some self-reflecting about what our prejudices are, and put ourselves in the uncomfortable situation of having the conversation. But the conversation should be had with an open heart and an open mind. And I have been talking to some of my white colleagues who are around the same age as me. And, actually it was very refreshing that they approached me to have a conversation. They said, look, since we were elected, I've got a chance to know you. I think you've gotten a chance to know me. And I think you know who I am, what I am, and what I believe in my value system. So I would love to sit down and talk with you and just have an honest, open dialogue, and if I say something that may be offensive, let me know. But please, because you know me, know that I'm not saying it in an intentionally disrespectful manner. Too many times we're afraid to have a conversation. We tiptoe around the issues without actually addressing the issues. And at the end of the day, nothing happens. Right. So I think that's is what it's going to take. Our generation, we haven't had to deal with the overt racism that Mr. Clark and my dad's generation had to deal with. That pain is still there, but it's not. I don't assume when I see a person who's white, I don't assume that they're ill-intentioned. Whereas if you were talking to my grandmother, my grandfather, my mom and dad, because of what they've seen and dealt with, that trust isn't there. So if anything's going to change, it's going to be with the younger generation. And I'm hopeful and optimistic. You've seen glimmers of hope in the legislature. When I talked about Edmund Jordan's bill to, prohibit qualified immunity, it died in committee. It died by a vote of 7-5. However, there were two young white Republicans who supported it. That's progress. It's not where we need to be, but we're going to get there.
And that kind of brings up this other the other thing that I feel like 2020 is the 7th month of 2020, and we have really been hit with everything. But then on top of that, on the heels, November, we have a very, very important election that's coming up. And so I was doing some research, and according to Pew Research, 1 in 10 voters is going to be part of the Gen Z group, and meaning they were born after 1996. And so they're going to be voting for the first time. So Jalen, I know that's some of your peers. Are you 18, Jalen? Are you 18?
No, far,
yeah. Oh, okay. You're far in the distance, but that's okay. You can still, I know you're paying attention.
Yes.
But so, that's very pivotal. And I remember the first time I voted. I mean, it was just really thinking back on the right to vote, how important it was, how my ancestors fought for this right. And then also just on top of my ancestors, just also women who fought for the right for me to vote as well as a woman. So, I'd love to get everybody's take on this. and I'll start with you, Jalen. You know, why do you think it's important to exercise your right to vote, especially in this age and this time that we are in now?
I believe because the person that you're voting for should speak for what, not if exactly, but like mostly what you're about. I feel like if you vote for someone who's like, I kind of agree with what they're saying, but it's like, then you should find someone else to vote for, even if that's not what you're used to. Because a lot of us are doing what our parents did. It's not that we're taking our own time and researching and understanding what each candidate is about. We're doing more so, my mom is this, my family is this, so I'm going to go with this as well. It's not, I don't think that, I mean, it's not a bad thing if that's what you want to do, but I think that we should really take time to see what each candidate is about and what they're saying, what their changes are, and what they plan to do, so that we can see, oh, I do really like this, and I think that we need this, and then that's where you should vote, or however you want to steer your vote.
Good. Kyle?
It's very important. I can tell you, as an elected official, we pay attention to those individuals who vote. If you don't vote, you don't matter. That's the unfortunate truth. But when we vote, we need not try to look for a perfect candidate. You would never have a perfect candidate unless you run.
Exactly.
You would never have someone who believe 100% of what you believe or the values that you believe in unless you yourself run. So every time you're choosing a candidate, it's always a compromise. In many cases, unfortunately, we say it's the lesser of two evils. And that played such an important role in the presidential election from 4 years ago with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. But we now see how that has had such huge ramifications. When we talk about the fact that whoever is the president of the United States appoints judges to the courts, not only the Supreme Court, but the lower courts, that's important. These judges have a lifetime tenure on the bench. And so as of right now, I think the last time I read something said that President Trump has filled probably about 40% of the judges on the bench. That's huge. We just got word a couple of days ago that Justice Ginsburg, has had a reoccurrence of cancer in her liver. She's 80, in her mid-80s. It's very important that we vote for president, that we also vote for lower down ballot races. Too many times, we see a drop off in turnout. From when Obama was on the ballot the 2 times, and then no one else really voted. But in my race for state rep or for legislative race, we don't vote. But actually, people like me, your state rep, your state senator, your councilman, your school board member, those are actually important too, because we have the most direct impact on your life. So it's very important that we vote, to exercise our vote, to make sure that we're counted, because if you're not at the table, you're on it.
Right. And I'm glad you talked about that, because we, like you mentioned, voter turnout does fall with local elections. And I think, sometimes all we see is the presidential, and we just don't take the effort to go out and vote for those local elections, or we think they're minuscule or they're not important, or, it's not that. And it actually is extremely important. So I'm glad that you did talk about the local elections, because like you said, they have even as much of an impact, or even a greater impact of what you come to see from this standpoint. So I'm glad you spoke about that.
Let me make one more point. And this is not to pit one generation against the other, but different generations have different value systems. Okay. And so I grew up in as a millennial. I grew up in a time where, you know, it's impossible to work your way through college.
Yep.
You have to take out enormous amounts of student loan. And when you
Yep.
graduate with
Yes.
this enormous debt, all right, and that debt affects your ability to go out and get a house when you want to, because your debt to income ratio is so high. So now you're forced with renting, where you just spending money on a monthly basis and not earning any equity in that piece of property because someone else owns it.
Mm-hmm.
I would dare to say that, you know, generations in the past have never had that problem because you could back then work your way through college. But now student loan debt is something that we will have to address because it's going to have a negative impact on the economy. I say that to say that if our generation votes, we have the votes now because we are the largest voting bloc. We've outpaced baby boomers, you know, in terms of our voting strength. But older people vote more consistently. They overperform their numbers in relation to their population. We don't, you know, and so they get to control what's important to them. And that's just the way our system is set up. That's the political process. Whoever votes, whoever gets the most votes, they control things. And they control policy. And so if things that we care about are really important to us, we need to go out and exercise our right to vote. You know, if you care about guns, you know, and the proliferation of guns in our community, you go vote. If you care about student loan debt, you go vote. If you care that the fact that, you know, we're losing a football field every 90 minutes of coast due to climate change, and that climate change is real, you go vote. If you feel that COVID is a serious disease and pandemic, and we need to have responsible people in office to deal with this, you need to go vote.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think from a generational standpoint, and this is just my personal opinion, I think that's why it's so important for us to talk about our history, because I think, you know, I'm a millennial as well. And so, I mean, I know you and I, we grew up in the same community. So we knew about those stories, and we had people, and we had the access to understand, you know, the right and the fight and all that kind of stuff as it relates to what it took to get to that voting point. So it's important for us. But I think as you kind of go through some of the shifts of these generations, there's so much access to information now. Everything is, you know, I want it quick and I want it fast. And these stories are not necessarily being told. And also some of the younger generations are not having the resources to understand the magnitude of going in there to just, oh, well, people might say, oh, well, I'm just clicking a button. But that is so important that there are so many people who do not have the right to do that. And I'll pivot to you, Mr. Knighton, since you have more wisdom, and so you have seen, you've seen that. So what do you think about, I guess, you know, for you, the voting is, that right to vote is different because you've definitely seen what it has taken to get to that point. And so, you know, as your job, as, you know, the person that you are, and speaking to students, and what do you talk about and being that resource for them so that they understand the history and why it's so important to exercise your right to vote?
Well, the first thing I want to do is say I agree with everything that each one of you have contributed and have said at this point. And as you know, there are certain things that you threw out that I was saying, especially Kyle, when you talk about the fact that voting, you know, if you want something to happen, you got to be a part of the process. You got to come to if you don't sit at the table, then you're not gonna be involved. You cannot complain if things don't go at your way. And the other thing is, you're never going to get a perfect candidate. There's always going to be something that somebody is different and will see differently than you see. However, you have to weigh whether or not this particular person appears, you have to look at appears, whatever you're voting for, appears to represent you in a positive or the most positive way. Now, again, you guys have studied some of the past and some of the things that contributed to where we are today. And I have the valuable experience of living through a lot of it, because I was technically here. I can remember didn't necessarily have the greatest impact on me then, although I've always been connected to historical information, and I've enjoyed to do that, to study different things like on that level. But you know, of course, I was around when the Civil Rights Act was signed in 64, then the Voting Rights Act under Johnson, all of that happened. I was here when, you know, the Brown versus Board of Education, I remember the impact of that and how that turned things around. But, you know, the thing that I guess sticks out to me is that I have to talk to young people all the time, and especially my seniors. One of the first things I say once you become a senior, if you are, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you can actually register before you're 18, but you can't vote until you're 18. I think that rule changed recently because the girls informed me, okay, yeah, we can do it, we can register. But I said, you got to register to vote. And I can't tell you who to vote for, and I will never try to tell you who to vote for, but I will say, take the time, especially in those elections where you're not absolutely sure who the person is or what the person has done or represented, how they behaved politically or in community service before. Go out and find some information about it. And that's the key to everything. Education. You've got to have yourself educated to be able to say, I feel certain that this is the direction I want to go in. And sometimes, I have to be honest, sometimes it doesn't always amount, especially in Louisiana, to go along party lines. You know, we think if I voted democratically this way all the time, then I'm going to stay voting democratically this way. That doesn't always work. I mean, as a lifelong Democrat, that's me. I don't have a problem saying that. There are times when I see qualities that I embrace in a Republican candidate. Or if you have 2 or 3 Republican candidates as opposed to, you've got to evaluate that. But the most critical part of the process is exercising your right to vote. And for those students who are on the cusp of being registered voters, like Jalen, it may not be soon, may not be in the presidential election, but you're going to have another election that's going to come up within the time next year, and you'll be 18.
Right.
You have to participate. People died, literally. People sacrificed their lives, to do this. People like John Lewis, who we just lost. Him. There's so many others. Everybody can focus on. You can call up a Dr. Martin Luther King, and that's a great name to think about. But there are so many others. You got people in Louisiana, in New Orleans, A.L. Davis. Okay, those people who struggled, who marched, who sat in, who peacefully demonstrated. Okay, so that everybody, and see, that's one of the things that gets lost in the historical account. That demonstrating was not just for Black people, for African Americans. That demonstrating, that protesting was for everybody, just like the protesting right now. We're talking about Black Lives Matter, and that's a great thing to be promoting and great place to be. But there are hundreds of other lives that are being taken inappropriately through acts of violence regarding police officers and in situations where they're being mistreated or abused. We got to address all of that. And the bottom line to it is accountability. Mm-hmm. I've heard all kinds of opinions about what to do with policing in America. The bottom line is, for anything you do, you got to be accountable. If you make a mistake, and that in particular is where we're suffering right now with leadership, accountability, especially on the federal level, missing a whole lot of accountability on the federal level. So when you decide that you're going to put your vote for somebody, your vote matters, because your one vote could push the ballot one way or the other for someone to get elected.
Yes.
I could go on, but I'm going to stop right there.
No. I still want to kind of talk more about this election, because just election in general and just representation of our lawmakers. because I think what we saw with, like I keep saying in May, I might sound like a broken record, but it was a pivotal moment. I think for me, this was the I guess in my adult years, you know, for the first time since I have been seeing all of this, that we've been seeing this that's happening in my 35 years. When the killing of George Floyd happened in May, it wasn't just the usual. So it wasn't just the usual people that are speaking out against. I mean, every time I opened my phone and I was on a social media platform, there was some sort of brand or thing that I liked, or, you know, even some of the networks, the TV, everybody is making statements on social injustice and inequality. And I think that was for the first time I have seen in a long time, where you have seen so much people that are just galvanizing and coming toward this.
Right.
And of course, it has also been very, very political. But to a point that you mentioned earlier, Kyle, about your own biases, right? We do have our own biases, and we do have our own prejudices too, as well. I mean, that's just the nature of who we are. And but that kind of goes back to the representation in elected officials. How important is a diverse representation? And I'm talking about not just the color of the skin. I'm talking about just religion, also gender, sexual orientation. Those are things that are now very, very prevalent. So with those biases that we know, you know, how important is it to have that diverse representation and to strive for that as it relates to elected officials?
You have members of the legislature who will be honest, who will tell you, wow, this is the first time I've ever been around Black people, let alone educated Black people who are lawyers, doctors, or professionals in my entire life. First time in their entire lives they've ever, when it came to the legislature, because the environment they grew up in was very homogenous, you know, and it's important because when you're exposed to other points of view, other cultures, other different lifestyles, it expands your ability to be a little bit more compassionate and a little bit more empathetic, because now, having been exposed to people who don't necessarily look like you, who have come from the same or similar background as you, who don't view the world as you view it, you're now able to break bread with them or communicate with them. And then you can put yourself or see the world through their perspective while standing in their shoes. That goes a long way. And that's what I've asked my colleagues to do in the wake of George Floyd is, you know, as I try to see your perspective through your lens, try to see the world through mine as a Black male in America and the things that I have to go through. And if we can do that, we can move mountains. And so that's why it's very important that we have diversity amongst our elected officials. You know, and look, in the legislature, I'm very worried because unfortunately, and this is going a little bit off topic, but you know, when we talk about the level of pay, you know, that legislators are paid, this is an issue that many people have, you know, addressed, but not willing to take it on, because when you pay your elected officials a very small amount, all right, and I do this because I love it. I don't do it because I'm making a whole bunch of money doing it. But when you have a situation where legislators are paid very nominal, you are creating a situation where only people who are either retired, rich, or lawyers are able to serve. Because very few people can afford the pay cut or the time away from their jobs to be able to serve. And that is not representative of Louisiana. You know, you look at Congress. Congress, it's expensive to serve in Congress. You know, in many cases, it'll cost you almost $2 million to run a congressional race. Well, who can raise $2 million? Most of the people in Congress are millionaires. Do you want a legislative body full of a whole bunch of millionaires? What does a millionaire have in common with me? How can a millionaire, a person who's very extremely wealthy, you know, relate to the issues that I have to relate to? They probably don't even know how much a gallon of milk costs, let alone what the minimum wage is, you know, or have people who deal with that on a day-to-day basis. You know, it's important that we have, you know, our elected officials, you know, be representative of the entire public.
Yeah, but I think to that point, that goes into the whole balance part of it. Like you were talking about, just because of just some of our backgrounds, we don't have access to all this cash, all these pensions, you know, retirement and all this. We didn't come from money. And so in order for elected officials to be more balanced, and then also to really have that diverse opportunity where you're having these diverse conversations and being representative of diverse backgrounds, that has to also change too as well. So that's probably a whole nother story, but I see the point. I mean, it's just really all connected. It really is. Jay, go ahead.
And that's one of the things that has come out recently when you talk about the building, you know, encompassing the whole picture of why, as a community, the people of color are always kind of left to get in many situations getting the leftovers, because we have not had the opportunity to build that generational wealth and to accumulate it. And wealth does not always mean money, but it sometimes just means influence. And many, you know, some of us in the way we were brought up, and myself, I'm one of those, and Kyle to a certain extent, we had families that gave us insight into what we would need as adults when we were children. There was no question when I was entering high school that I had some choices, but it wasn't a question of if you go into high school, you were going to high school. Once I finished high school, there ain't no question. You going to college. Okay, now what you do beyond there is up to you, but you going to college.
Right.
So there, and again, that came not only from my parents, but that came from my entire village. And they didn't necessarily have to beat it on you, but they said, you can do this. You're going to do this. You're going to be a leader. And coming from that generation, and I think Jalen can attest to this, I'm that guy that's going to be cheerleading. And well, Rebecca, you've been there too. I'm going to tell you, you got to make a difference. You have the talents, you have the skills. You got to bring forward the next generation with what you're capable of doing. And you got to be a leader. Now, a leader doesn't necessarily go around touting a big stick. A leader sets examples of positive behavior. But all of that to say, we have not had all of the doors that open to us that some people have had open to them. And as Kyle mentioned, if you've never had the experience to be, or give you an example, a lot of major decisions are made on the golf course. If you've never seen a golf course, if you've never played around a golf or tennis, or you don't know some of the people in your community who are sitting in these positions, whatever color they are, if you don't know how to approach them, you don't know how to reach out to them, then you're at a deficit. So and the same thing goes on the other side. If you've never walked with a Black person, sat down and talked with them about what their life has been and what their experience is about, then your vision, your view is going to be one-sided, and it's going to leave a deficit. You can't see how I might be affected by someone doing something like what happened to George Floyd, because your view is, well, he was a criminal and he was doing something and the police had the right to. No, that's not it. You got to see that there's a deeper story to this. There's a deeper history to it.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Amen to all of those points. Jalen, so we've all been talking, and we've all been sharing things from our different generational perspectives. But I'm interested and curious to know, you know, since you are in high school currently and you're seeing this like right in front of your face, and it definitely is a pivotal moment. And then making the choice to be part of Sudia is amazing. So that already shows me, I mean, I don't know you personally, but that already shows me that you see the value in diversity, even at this young age, and what you are looking to do as it relates to once you graduate from AOL. What do you hope that this particular situation in this particular space that we are in right now, what do you hope comes from this?
There's so much, but the main thing is that we all can be on like an even line. Well, not so much a line, but like we're all at an even level. Because right now I feel like everyone kind of thinks that they're more, thinks that they're this, or feels a certain way. So I really hope that all of us are on an even playing field. We all get the same equal opportunities, no matter, skin color, race, how your hair is, how your face is shaped, type of stuff like that. I just hope that we're all seen as, well, we're human beings. Just because we all look different don't mean you're better than me and I'm not as much as you, type of thing like that.
No, that's amazing. And what do you help, and how do you think Sudia is going to be helpful in changing that narrative? Because I mean, it is a great school in Marrero. I have to say myself, from being a graduate of Archbishop Blank, but Marrero is a small town. But just because we're small in numbers doesn't mean that we can't make an impact. So, what do you think that, what do you look for and envision and hope that Sudia can do on your campus?
A lot of us who are into the tend to stay behind the scenes and kind of just, just kind of let stuff pass or brush under the rug. I think Sudia bring like awareness to a lot of things that needs to be talked about. And Sudia is a place where you can talk about things and you don't feel like attacked. You don't feel like you're going to get in trouble for talking about it. You don't feel like I'm saying the wrong thing. It's more of, let's bring awareness and empower the people who are at the school to graduate. Because once you become not outspoken, but once you become able to voice your opinion at Sudia, then that can travel to you voice your opinion in the real world when you actually do leave AOL. Because it's like a small school, so we all kind of used to talking in front of each other. But whenever you leave the school, then we're able to okay, well, I remember I was able to say this in Sudia, I didn't get in trouble. Well, let me try this in public. And now that changed the whole generation of kids who just came out of school. And I really, that's great.
Oh no, that's definitely, that's great. And to kind of also to pivot to Kyle. So Kyle, you see here with Jalen and students like Jalen that are part of these grassroots efforts in high school, but that's actually where it starts, right? It starts in taking these types of leadership roles. They may not think that they're leaders, but it starts in these particular settings. So what advice would you give to students like Jalen who are being part of these change moments and being these change agents, if they want to be in a career as a public officer or an attorney like you are? If you can shed a little bit of light on your journey and kind of how the seed was planted, I think that would be awesome. Because that also kind of turns back to that diversity, having the resources and know that it is something that can actually be done, because I did it. And so I'd love for you to speak on that too.
First, with respect to getting young people involved in public service, like you, Jalen, I started off in high school. My freshman year, I ran for class representative, and that continued well into college. And I learned through the process, how to deal with people, how to, if you want to lead, you have to be first willing to follow and listen. First thing. And you learn those personal skills early on, in high school, in college. So you're on the right track. You know, you start early and you get involved and you try to build a consensus. You know, I'm never one to try to go it alone. In my current office, I try to bring other people together to recognize my point of view, or be willing to hear them out and redirect or change, because there is a strength in numbers. Right? You can't do anything alone unless you have people supporting you, you know, with you or pushing you from behind. I also had the good fortune of watching, you know, public service from my grandfather, who was one of the first African-American to be a Jefferson Parish Sheriff's deputy, and what he did with the junior deputy program for people who were in Mr. Clark's generation. My other grandfather, who was a pastor for 36 years. My father, who was a three-term state legislator, uncle who served in the legislature and Congress, another uncle who was a judge. So I got to witness it firsthand. So that's something I just gravitated towards. And my mom, she's also an attorney. So, you know, although at first I initially said I was never going to be an attorney, but when you grow it's like
I said the same thing. I didn't want to be a teacher.
but that's not unnatural, because you see, you know, children will normally, you know, take on the professions of their parents or what they know, and that's all I've ever known. You know, and gosh, what was it? Did I hit everything, or I think I'm missing something?
No, I think you hit everything, but I just wanted to, well, the one thing I wanted to wanted you to kind of really talk about too is, you know, like the industry of lawyers and judges, we don't see a lot of us. We don't see a lot of Black people. And so the fact that you are a lawyer and then also now a public official, you know, for viewing audiences, especially the youth that are watching this, just kind of shed some light on how that can be attainable. And we need you guys, essentially, if that's something that you're interested in doing.
Yes.
Very interested in doing.
You know, unfortunately, the legal profession is, you know, as far as popularity, is right under or right above dog catcher, you know, but we do perform a valuable service to people. We are on the front lines protecting you from abuses, from the government, from other people. The strides that we have made as a people would not have been but for the lawyers who took up our cases, you know, challenging separate but equal through Board of Education, Brown versus Board. In many other cases that has, you know, come down through the courts. With respect to here in Jefferson Parish, I'll put this on your radar. We are in the process of doing the census. The census is very important. The census, what the census is every 10 years, the government has to collect a count of its citizens in local municipalities and states to give a number to how to allocate resources. And whoever has the most people gets the most resources. And also we do what's called redistricting and reapportionment. And so here in Jefferson Parish, you know, African Americans make up 25% of the population. Hispanics make up about 15. That's around 40%. So 60% is white. Well, when we look at the makeup of our courts, particularly in Gretna, we have 16 judges. All but 3 are white. So if you say, well, you know what, I think the judges over in Gretna in the 24th JDC should be more representative of the population, and that means you should have more minorities at the court. That means that those minorities, if a person like me or you or any person of color, you know, is ever arrested and has to go before one of those judges, there's a greater chance that they'll get a judge who can have a little bit more empathy and compassion because they've come from the same community than someone who hasn't. And that has an impact on our criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
So it just goes back to our point earlier about having equal representation in the legislature, but we also have it in our or in elected officials. We also should also have it in our judges and our lawyers and things like that.
Right. Well, everyone, we're going to wrap up, but I definitely wanted to give each of you just some final words. And as it relates to what we've been talking about, if you wanted to just wrap up and just say some final thoughts. So Jalen, I will hand it over to you. Ladies first.
I want to say thank y'all so much because I learned a whole lot just sitting here and listening to y'all, because not many people talk about these type of things with us, wait till you get older type of thing. But I learned so much, and I want to thank y'all for giving me the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Kyle?
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this dialogue, and I would encourage everybody to, number one, as we said earlier, fill out your census. Two, if you are not registered to vote, register to vote. And you can do it online. You can actually do it through your phone. Go to www.govote.com. That's GEAUXVOTE.com. You can get registered within 5 minutes. So there's literally no excuse for anyone not to be registered to vote, because most people have a phone or access to internet.
Right.
Then going forward, encourage everyone to pay attention to the candidates. There will be qualifying going on next week for various races. Pay attention to who qualifies. Pay attention to the platforms of those specific candidates. And just pay attention, be informed, and on November 3rd, go out and exercise your right to vote.
Absolutely. Mr. Knighton?
Well, the first thing I want to say is how proud I am to be on this panel, and how thankful I am for you inviting me and putting this together, Rebecca. And I'm so proud of you and Kyle, because I've had the good fortune to see you coming up in your formative years and to see what you have grown into and developed. And I'm so very proud of that. And I am also proud to see Jalen coming up in somewhat the same direction. And I pray for her to continue to grow into the leader that she can be. I echo what Kyle said. You gotta register to vote. Then once you register, go do it. Take time to fill out the census, because the census means benefits for our community, for your community, wherever you are. The other thing is, let's look at each other as human beings. Jalen, you said a mighty thing. You said that it's not about black or white. We do look differently for all kinds of reasons. We got short, tall, fat, bald, this color, light, dark, whatever. But the most important thing is we're all created in the image of the God, whatever God that is that we embrace and we serve. And we're all human beings. And we have to learn to listen to each other in order to get beyond this moment. And this moment is going to make a difference. I know it is going to make a difference. But we've got to come to the table together and stop trying to defend one side versus the other. As I said in a conversation I was in recently, we got people that are so far apart on either side of issues. But what we got to do is work towards getting closer to the middle and finding out the things that we embrace together and the things that we can see clearly with each other. And it's not about trying to get a victory or a hand up against the other. It's about trying to work together to live together. And as we can talk about all the political things, we can talk about the killing and the changing of laws and defunding the police and all that stuff. But right now, we got to get past COVID-19. And right now, there is so much division dealing with just that issue. And that's about saving lives. And COVID has it's a cliche, it has no respect of party. It's about people doing doing the best they can do to stay safe. But the most important thing is sharing love with one another. I think that's it. And as a teacher, and again, like I told her, it's a joke. This is something, I kept fighting this for years. I said, no, I am not going to do this. I did not want to do this. But God has a different plan for us. And if we keep the plan of God in the first and foremost in our minds, then we can achieve a lot together. And understand you're going to make mistakes. Make a mistake, you fall down and you get back up again. And again, as Kyle mentioned, that there are people sometimes who say, I want to listen to you. I want to help. I want to be a part of the conversation with you. And if I say something wrong, let me know it's wrong, and so I can fix it. I, totally agree. That's what way we got to live. And with that in mind, once again, I'm happy to have been a part of this discussion, and I've learned quite a bit as well.
Great.
Go
ahead.
Let me make one point, and I'm trying to let everybody knows, about this. So last session, the legislature passed what was called the Louisiana Main Street Recovery Grant Program. And it gives individuals or business owners the ability to receive a $15,000 grant with respect to any COVID losses. So I would encourage people, especially minorities, because money was set aside for minority-owned business and women to receive this grant. And so I'd encourage them to go to www.louisianamainstreet.com for more information. To see, one, if they qualify, and then the steps about how to go about receiving this money. Because there were so many businesses that were affected by this, but minority businesses as well. And so many have been affected by this. There's a saying that, when America has a cold, African Americans get the flu.
Get the flu. Mm-hmm.
So, this is important. So I just want to encourage everyone to take part in that if they can.
Kyle, can you say the website again? Because I want to make sure we get it.
I was about to ask.
It's www.louisianamainstreet.com. That's MAINSTREET.com. And Louisiana spelled out. So louisianamainstreet.com.
Thank you, Jalen, Kyle, and Mr. Knighton for joining me today on how can I impact change for this most needed dialogue on matters of the heart. I wish you guys safety throughout this time, and we're going to get through this. We really are. And so to the viewers as well, we wish you all safety, and stay tuned for the next episode of Matters of the Heart.